Welcome to Be in Tune. Join me, your host Darian, and my producer Joab, as we have conversations that deepen our connection with our higher power, ourselves, and the world around us. So, get ready to tune in, turn up that volume, and welcome to the Be in Tune podcast.
For some reason, technology just didn't want to support our our amazing intro. So, what we're doing now is that we're just re-recording kind of like the introduction for episode. Is it 5? Episode 5?
Six, yeah.
Episode 6?
Yeah.
Dang. Where did 5 go? Or I think 5 is what I think is 4. You know what? Never mind. Let's not try to dissect my head right now. Okay. So, yeah, this is just like the introduction to episode 6. This is the pod where we talk about like working with the pain. And that's a very good episode in my personal opinion. Maybe a little biased. But I'm going to leave this introduction here with a question. And the question's not for you, audience. It's for Joab, because the pod literally picks up with Joab at answering the question. So what happened was, actually, I never explained what happened. What happened is that our introduction, you could hear double of me. Listen, you'll need to hear me once, one of me. Like, you'll need to hear double of me. So the audio is just the thing that just didn't work out so well. So yeah, Joab, would you like to comment on this?
Would I prefer to have the audio still be double audio when I was giving my answer? Probably, yeah. That would save me some transparency.
Your answer was good. Your answer was good.
It was
okay.
Good. It was good.
Give the people what they want. They want a vulnerable Joab. They want transparency.
True.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's what they're gonna get.
So the question that I asked Joab is, we got onto the topic of singlehood because I mentioned how I went to a bridal shower, and I was talking about how at the beginning of the day, before I went to the bridal shower, I woke up with some pain. Hence, that's what leads into the main conversation, the main topic of working with pain. All right. So I'm sure I go into further details later down in that pod, right? Later in the time, I should say. But with that being said, we were talking about expectations that society likes to put on couples, right? When are you two going to start dating? When are you two going to get engaged? When are y'all going to get married? When are you going to have some kids? And I'm like, we like to be a bunch of nosy bodies, just be asking the when, right? And then I felt the type of way because I've been asked this of like, when are you going to get married? And I was like, no one in the history of the earth has ever asked, how are you enjoying your singlehood? And that's what I asked Joab. I'm like, how are you enjoying your singlehood? And the reason why I went down that route is because we do focus a lot on marriage, right? And talking about what a blessing it is, and which it is, and what a beautiful chapter, or chapters, I should say, it is for many people's lives. But singlehood is also very important as well. And Joab actually gives a fantastic answer to that question. So I was just feeling a type of way. I was like, how come no one has ever asked me, how are you loving singlehood? No one has ever asked me that. But when I asked him the question, my dude, of course, being a man of faith, just has to give like that answer. So enjoy the pod. You guys are amazing. What else can I say? Peace.
To be honest, if you were to ask me this, let's just say 2 years ago, I would have said no, absolutely not. Like, what? There's nothing enjoyable about it. Absolutely not. Now I've come to understand, there definitely is. There's a huge blessing and benefit to it. And it's so funny that you bring this up too. I was watching a clip, not the podcast episode, but a clip of the basement. It just randomly just
Mm.
popped up, and
Yes, I know
you
what you're
know
gonna talk
what?
about. Go ahead, talk
Yes,
about it. Talk about it. Talk
yes,
about it.
yes. And he brought it up. I was like, wow, I never thought of it that way. But anyways, let me get into it. So he was saying, just like how you were saying, most people don't really consider, the singleness season as like a blessing or anything like that. But he was bringing it in the light of, and hopefully I don't get this wrong, but he was bringing it in the light of a singleness season is a blessing because it's necessary, because that's your time, your one-on-one time to have direct connection with God solely. So it's very, very important that you do that in your singleness season, because that also carries into when you're in a relationship. Because because you're in a relationship, you're not done being single. You're still to yourself and
Oh,
to God too. So yeah, it was interesting. It was a very interesting perspective. And again, it was like a short clip, but I'm just like, wow, like I never thought about it like that. Like, and it's true, like even in my current season where it's like I'm more honed into like what God has for me, and more so in direct connection and communication to what God is trying to say to me. Um, yeah, like it completely shifted my perspective. So yeah.
yeah. I heard something like that before, but I saw that clip too of like singleness is holiness or something like that. And I was like, ooh, definitely adding it to the list of pods I'm going to listen to, episodes I'm going to listen to. Um, but I really do appreciate, especially in that podcast, how the host has always like made it known, like marriage is great and it's beautiful, and your singlehood is great and it's beautiful as well. Like I like how
Yeah.
both, like like for him to present it as they're both great. They're both great. One, though, is going to be more challenging than I think we ever thought it can be, because you are now uniting yourself with a whole other person. But when you're by yourself, like it's there's greatness to that. And it's I never thought about that when I was younger. But now that I'm older, I'm seeing the value in it. Yeah, I do desire, to be with someone. I do desire to eventually get married and maybe have a little Darian running around, right? Um, but right now, I feel like that's a season I'm in of like, how am I doing with like the waiting, right? How am I going
Mm,
to wait for a special someone, right? And I mean, like, not just sit in my house and wait, like, you know what I mean? Like, what am I doing in the waiting? Like, how productive am I being? How am I growing as a person? Especially, how is my relationship with God growing? Right? These are very good questions. And I love that I get this time to explore that and just
mm-hmm.
really cement who I am, because I do not want to be with someone that I have to be dependent of. Like my
True.
identity is dependent of them. I would like to be with someone that I am a partner with, right? And yes, there's going to be some level of dependency in some aspects in some situations, right? I don't want to go into those details, so don't ask me what's up. Um, but I really want to be like my own person. Like, hello, I'm me. God made me me. So who am I? Right? Can I answer that question? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Am I going to the places that I want to go? I love the fact that I have a trip scheduled to go to South America in
Ooh.
October. And it was just a friend asked me, and I didn't hesitate. I said, say less. Here's my card. Book the flight. I am coming. Right? And those are some things that you can do easily in singlehood. Like that's an example. So I really do appreciate, I respect it. I respect the whole marriage is great and your singlehood is great as well.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. I love that. I absolutely love
mhm.
that.
Mhm. Mhm. I can say more about it, but I ran out of words on it. I feel like I ran out of steam a little bit. All right, picking myself back up. I actually would like to shift our conversation back to what I was saying about waking up with pain, because today's what I lived through today just was like a great imagery for a topic. And the topic is working through the pain. Spoken like a true therapist. I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we gotta
Mm-hmm.
learn how to work through the pain. So, as I mentioned, I woke up this morning. The pain that I felt yesterday intensified. I was like, I was even doing the whole ooh ah. When I got out of bed, I said, Jesus, help me. Like
Oof.
I can't. It was just bad. Um, but I ate my little bowl of cereal. I popped my two Advils, and I looked at the time, and I said I might as well start getting ready because Lord knows this is gonna be a slow process because I had to be at the house at 10 today. Um, and I did it. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I did not want to go to the shower after waking up this morning with this pain. No way did I want to go. Um, no thanks. As much as I love my friend, because I'm like, my body's broken. That's how dramatic I can be. If I have pain, I'm like, my body's broken. I'm breaking. And didn't think I was going to have a good time because of the pain that I was feeling. But something amazing happened, right? One, the Advil kicked in. So praise the Lord for that, right? The Advil kicked in. Uh, Two, the hot shower that I took really helped too, right? The shower that I took just really helped with, like, I don't know, it just did something. It just helped to relax my body a bit. And yes, I definitely took a hot shower even though it's been hot these past few days. I'm that person. Well,
Mm.
when it was really, really hot, I really wasn't taking the hot shower. I was like, Lord, make it colder. Make the water colder. Uh, but the shower did its thing. And then I had to shift my attitude. I had to shift my attitude. See, a lot of us have pain, physical or emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever you want to categorize the pain in. And honestly, we have no choice but to keep on moving with that pain. There's some situations that you have no choice but to work through the pain. Now, you may be thinking, your example here, your story, it's not that deep. You really didn't have to go to the shower. No, I didn't really have to go to the shower, but I wanted to be at the shower to support my friend, to start this new chapter in her life with such positivity and support. And as I was there and working kind of through my pain and I shifted my mindset, I was able to enjoy myself. I was laughing with people and talk about laughter being such a great medicine. Seriously, I've always heard that just laugh. It helps keep you healthy, right? Laugh. It creates more, what is it, white blood cells or something like that. Like, just laugh more. I don't know, I'll have to research that this one. But just laugh more. It's a good medicine for you, and it truly was. I was able to enjoy myself. I cracked jokes. I did a terrible painting. I was the DJ. It was a good time, and it was towards the end that I was just like, ooh, I'm starting to feel it, because yes, that I had to take my other dose of Advil to keep up with it, right? But also, I was out my house for most of the day, so my body was just getting tired. Um, and I was very proud of myself to say I'm calling it quits. I had to say, all right, y'all, I gotta go, which is true. I did have to go because I had to come here, to record. Um, and even though I was probably thinking, should I cancel on Joab? I'm like, he'll be okay. I'll be okay because I spend most of the day with this pain. So I know when it's really bad and I know when it's manageable. A lot of us, when we're feeling pain, though, it can be so intense for us. And sometimes we're just so focused on the pain that honestly, sometimes you're missing when the pain is actually at its peak and when it's starting to come down. Pain, in a way, is kind of like the EKG. It goes up and down, up and down. You have your high points and you have your low points. Now, I'm not a person that walks around with chronic pain, so I do not want to dismiss or invalidate, better yet, invalidate my folks who walk around with chronic pain.
And I guarantee though, if someone who has chronic pain sitting in front of me right now would say, "You're right. I can tell when my pain is really bad and when it's manageable." And that's important to know, because then you'll know what you're capable of. Then you'll know what you're capable of doing, and you know what you have to do, and you know when to adjust accordingly. My mom, when I was 11, my mom had a terrible accident at work. My mom's a teacher, for those of you who don't know, and she was getting ready to sit back down on her chair, but the chair was one of those chairs that you could just blow on it and it'll move. And the chair moved slightly as she was getting ready to sit down, and she fell hard on
Goodness.
her bum, that she herniated her two lower discs on her back. My mom was laid up for 2 months. Laid up for 2 months. I've never seen my mom laid up. And as I think about it now as an adult, it was just what a time it was to see my mom, who was just so active and who would still play with me. No, my mom was going to school for full time, right? No, she was going to school part time. She was working full time, and that did not take away from her responsibility of being a full time wife and a full time mother. And at this point, my little sister was born. I think Audrey was maybe like 1 or so, maybe 1.5, maybe 2. I don't know. I can't remember her age. Well, wait, no. If I was 11, then Audrey was. It's semantics, and we don't really have to focus on those details. But the point is that my mom went from just doing everything to being laid up. And I could only imagine how it felt for her to live through that intense pain and to work through that intense pain. My mom being laid up, though, she found ways to sit in better positions, so therefore she could be more mobile in a sense. Like if she could sit up, that meant she can do more as opposed to lying down. But she had to figure out how long she can sit up for and when she had to lie down. My little sister being a baby at that time, maybe I was younger than 11, but anyways, my little sister being a baby, a toddler, she was so used to sitting on mommy's lap or sitting on mommy. And so it had to be like, you can bring Audrey, have Audrey sit on me, but Audrey has to come down after a certain point. My mom also had to learn how to let go during that season, because she had to really trust us, the three of us, meaning my dad and I, to help keep the house going. And Lord have mercy, I was not an easy child to train in doing chores. Like, she had to teach me, so I had to like sweep and mop a floor from the couch. You missed that spot. And my attitude probably wasn't the greatest. But she's like, I would do this, but I can't do this. I need you to help me. So I had to, she was teaching me how to kind of somewhat clean up the house and manage the household. I was like her arms. I was her arms and her legs at that point. And granted, I look grown for a child because I grew extremely fast. I don't know why I grew so fast just to get to this height. I asked God, Lord, I was like, what was the race? What was the rush? Like, seriously. I didn't end up being 6 feet tall. I just ended up being 5'6". I was like, God, what was the rush? But she had to learn how to let go, and she had to let go of her own probably perfectionism on how she got certain things done, because I wasn't sweeping and mopping that floor the way she would. So there's a lot to be said about when you're experiencing pain and having to learn how to readjust with the pain. Now, my mom probably could have easily felt that pain, right? And probably could have easily gone down to an extreme of, I'm feeling it, I'm hurt, I can't do anything, and probably allow herself to go to a very dark place that a lot of us have gone to, or some of us are still in. Instead, though, she had to learn how to trust in God, trust in her husband, trust in her very difficult to train child, right? Even trust her sister-in-law, who came one day to like clean down the house for her and to make it look
presentable the way she wanted. She also had to learn how to trust maybe the doctors for what they suggested, but most importantly, she had to learn how to trust her body, right? And trust what she knew her body was capable of and what it wasn't capable of. My mom picked up swimming during that time, and I remember it being the best exercise. Like, that was her exercise. She couldn't run, she's a runner, but she picked up swimming because that was the best thing for her back. So guess where we were going on some weeknights? We were going to the Y, and it was the best time ever. Audrey and I would be playing while she was doing her laps. She learned how to work through her pain. She learned how to readjust. She learned how to not let this pain stop her from exercising, because she switched up the exercise. She didn't allow it to stop her. If anything, it allowed her to expand her thinking, change her perspective, readjust accordingly, and keep at it. Her goal probably in life was just to keep living. And it could have been worse. Her accident could have been worse. The mode of accident could have been worse. My mom could have been paralyzed if it was a much worse accident and such. But praise God it wasn't. And praise God that she gave me the example. She showed me the example of what it is to kind of work through the pain. And you know what? I didn't even think of this till now, until I started talking. So, Joab, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah,
I kind of
cool.
see it in your eyes.
First of all, for those who are listening, like, just even, I've met Darian's mom probably a handful of times now. She is adorable. She is amazing. Honestly, Darian and her mom are literally like one to one, especially when Darian gets like very like passionate about a topic. You can hear a change in her voice. Like, that's Darian's mom. So go back, listen to the old episodes or listen to the episodes coming on. And if you see like a sense of like her tone start to shift, that's Darian's mom for sure. But Darian's mom is just it's true.
We look nothing alike, but we could sound alike in some ways.
For sure. For sure. But yeah, Darian's mom is just such a strong woman. Mentally, physically, she is a strong woman. And I was thinking, like, my goodness, like my heart broke because I could imagine it's like the grieving process of like what she was capable of doing before like the accident, you know? There's a grieving process with that as well. And the grieving process just in general is never easy. Um, but yeah, I'm so glad she picked up swimming. So glad. Swimming is just not just a good exercise, but it's just so good for recovery. Like, it's so easy on the joints. So I can imagine like that's like great for her too. But there was one thing that you said that really stuck out to me, and like it's so true. I think I'm not a physical therapist, but I heard a lot of other physical therapists will say the same thing. You never want to work against an injury or a limited range of motion. You want to work with it. The more you work with it, alongside with it, the better the recovery, the better the healing, and the better the growth. So yeah, like I think with what you were saying, Darren, like working alongside with it rather than going against it, makes it a lot more bearable. It teaches you like your range that you're able to operate within. Um, and yeah, again, like it helps like with the recovery and the healing process as well. So yeah, always opt for working alongside with the pain rather than working against it. Absolutely.
Yeah. My gosh, that just speaks to like the therapeutic work, the emotional work for sure. And I understand why we wouldn't want to work with it, why we want to work against it, or why we want to avoid it. Like, forget it. I don't want to work with you, period. I don't even want to be in the same vicinity as you. I'm going to numb it instead. I'm going to numb this pain. I'm going to pretend that it's not here.
Mm,
And I don't have to go into the various ways we numb our pain. I think we know. Some of you who are listening to this, or, listening or watching this, some of you may be numbing your pain. You may feel like a type of way towards me right now because I'm saying it that way. But we all do it. I want to speak like my friend Katie. Baby, we all do it. Baby, like that's what she calls me. We're the same age, but she still calls me that. But it's true. Baby, we all do it. We all do. Whether it be isolating from our friends, whether it be staying up all night, right? Watching Netflix, right? And we're not chilling. We're just watching video after video, or being on YouTube watching video after video, whether it be us engaging in substance use, whether it us be engaged in toxic relationships. There's just some pains, right, that we want to numb, or we think we're working with it, but you're really working against it because you don't think you're strong enough to work with this pain. You don't think you can deal with it because you think that that pain is just going to completely undo you.
Mm,
It is not. It is not going to undo you.
yeah.
How do I know? Because we're human. We are way more resilient than we like to give ourselves credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Period. We are resilient. Well, I'm not that strong. I'm not that strong. I can't do it. Yes, you can. Well, I had to ask for help. That's you being strong. Don't get it twisted. If you are asking for help, baby, you are courageous. That should be my tagline. Baby, you are courageous. No, you are. That's what Brene Brown talks about when it comes to us being vulnerable. She actually says that vulnerability, if you don't know who Brene Brown is, I've mentioned this in the past. If you don't know, now you know. Go research her. She's a genius. She's fantastic. But she talks about how when we engage in vulnerability, we're actually engaging in a courageous act, because all of the amazing things or heroic things that have happened in history, vulnerability was right there. It was right there. That soldier that went to save so many lives, he was scared. He was vulnerable in that moment. And yet he still chose to go save some lives. Because
Yep.
you know what he worked with? He worked with that vulnerability to get to that point of being courageous, right? To get to that act of doing something courageous. Imagine what you can do if you worked with your pain. Like truly worked with it. Imagine who you would be if you actually let sadness be in the room with you, if you actually let anger be in the room with you, if you actually let fear be in the room with you. And I'm not talking about having your numbing tools or behaviors there in the room with you. No, I'm saying kick them out, but actually metaphorically, ooh, why did they do that?
Oh, that was new. Did like some type of sparkle congratulations effect.
I guess so. I guess me moving my hands means fireworks, right? Thank you. I forget to turn off the reactions. Oh well. Um no, but I'm talking about, like, let's look at this imagery. You're in a room, right? And you actually let that pain, that the emotions behind your pain be there in the room with you. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to see it for what it really is.
Mm,
Because
ooh,
that anger is actually going to turn into something else. Because anger is an umbrella emotion. Because anger is typically a secondary emotion. Because there's more behind that anger. Or anger is actually the reaction to an actual emotional reaction, to your initial reaction, hence why it's secondary. Because you're going to see it for what it really is. Anxiety, that little sucker of an emotion, is actually a little sucker. And let me explain. Anxiety likes to make itself bigger than what it is. It really does. Okay, I don't know if this is a great reference point, and the Christians who may be listening to me, please don't stop listening to me, because I'm about to bring in some pop culture here. But I'm about to bring some pop culture in here, and it's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I used to love watching that show. But there's what I loved about the show. It just kind of, the creator said that it created a show about Buffy facing kind of like the quote unquote demons that a teen would face, right? But the imagery of the demon was in vampires. Anyways, we're not going to get down to that. What we're going to talk about is a particular episode that I thought it did a fantastic job illustrating what fear is. So in this episode, Buffy is fighting a monster that she can't see, but it's big and it's scary and it causes people to paralyze themselves. And when it came down to revealing who the monster was, it was the tiny, cutest little thing ever. I mean, it wasn't that cute because it was angry looking, but it was just like, oh, I'm about to put this in my pocket. And I think one of the characters was like, this is who we were scared of. That's anxiety. That is fear. It likes to make itself bigger than what it is. There was an artist who decided to draw all the different mental health diagnoses, like actual mental health disorders. And he drew anxiety, and it's a cutest little monster with a clock, because anxiety is always centered around time. Usually it's centered around time. But the clock is broken in his drawing. So what time are we being pressed on? Because the clock's not working. The clock is broken. Is this making sense?
Wow. I really have to think about that. So it's the small little thing that's holding the clock because anxiety runs is time-based, but the clock is broken.
In this painting, in this drawing, I was like, whoa.
Wow.
When you're in the room with the emotions behind your pain, you're actually going to see your pain for what it is. You're going to see the emotion for what it is. Learn to work with that pain. Learn to sit with it. Learn to sit with that uncomfortable feeling. It's not comfortable, right? Nobody wants to do it. No one in the history of the earth said, I feel like sitting with my anxiety today. No, and instead it's so giddy. No one. But when you learn to sit with it, when you learn to work through the pain as opposed to avoid the pain, you'll learn something new about yourself. You'll learn that one, you're resilient. You'll learn two, that you're capable of so much more. Here come the balloons. What? These emotional reactions are getting on my last nerve. Anyways, not emotional reaction, emoji reactions. That's what they are. Not emotional reactions. Oh, my shoulder. But you're resilient, you're capable, and you'll see hope. You'll see hope. You'll see hope. One of my favorite biblical stories that kind of actually does a good job in highlighting hope is Jesus is sleeping on a boat, and he's on the boat with the disciples, and there's like a huge storm, and Jesus is knocked. Like, my dude is out. Like, you would probably think that the storm was a nice little like cradle for him. Like, he is gone. And they're freaking out. The disciples are freaking out. And then they're like, wake him up. They wake him up. They're like, bro, you got to do something. Granted, this is my revised version of this. So for those of you who are just like, you're not even quoting the Bible correctly, that's fine. I'm just giving you my paraphrase. It's in the Bible. Look it up. Google it. And Jesus wakes up and he tells the storm to be still. They're going through it. They were going through a storm. They were going through a storm, but hope was literally sleeping in the boat with them. For some of you, this is not your thing, so you can skip this part. You can fast forward if you would like, if this is not your thing. But for those of you, if faith is your thing, when you learn to work through your pain, when you learn to sit with those uncomfortable emotions, remember that hope is in the boat with you, is in that boat with you when you're going through your storm. But we be forgetting that. We be forgetting it all the time. I'm guilty of that. I'm so guilty of that. It's not even funny. We just forget. But we can't forget. We have to remind ourselves. This is why I like to encourage people to journal. You should journal.
Mhm.
Joab, you and I have talked about journaling.
We have a lot, whether it's journaling through a physical book or through the Apple iPhone app. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you journal, I encourage you to read back on what you wrote. Read back. Read back on what you wrote 6 months prior or 3 months prior or heck even 2 weeks prior. And then notice how things may have changed. Because there's a constant in this world, and it's change. Change is a constant, right? It's the only thing that we know that's actually going to happen. Change, right? But read back on how things change, but also read back on how you got through the storm. Whether it was just one day of hell for you, but you're still struggling, still read about how you got through it. I didn't get through it. I just numbed it and I just kept moving. Okay, well, that was your way of getting through it. Now, maybe you want to ask yourself, is there a better way to get through it? I'm sure there is. But you got through it. Can we not dismiss that part? You got through it, right? If you need to but if you need to learn healthier and better ways of coping and getting through, by all means do it, because there's nothing sweeter and greater than learning how to get through something difficult and doing it in the most healthiest way possible. But read back, journal, write down your experiences, and then just read back. There's a skill in DBT, and it's called Wise Mind with Activities, or it's Distract with Activities, and it's an acronym, but it kind of breaks down what what was it? Is it was it? The point is, it's an acronym, but there is a particular word that's used there, and it's called comparison. Um, and when you that part, it's encouraged folks to compare yourselves to those that are less fortunate than you, right, or those that are suffering more, to see, to kind of give you like that perspective shift, right, to readjust on how you're viewing things. And I've had some clients in the past are like feel a type of way about that. They're like, I don't want to compare myself to someone less fortunate. I feel like that's mean, that's rude. First of all, we like to compare ourselves to those who are doing better than us, right? Don't you think that that's mean and rude towards yourself? There's that question, right? But I was like, then compare yourself to yourself. What do you mean? Compare yourself to what you've gone through in the past and compare on how you're doing right now. Oh, I'm I'm doing better in a sense of I've learned to ask for help, or I'm doing better because I'm in therapy. So yes, asking for help. I'm doing better because I'm not smoking as intensely as I used to, or I've reduced my drinking, or I'm not harming myself as bad as I used to. Yeah, because you know what you are being, you know what you're doing? You're surviving. You're resilient. You're recognizing that you're capable. Joab, I saw you going on your computer. Did you like look up that skill?
I was trying to, yes. Yeah, but I couldn't find with activity specifically. You said
Oh
the
my
wise
gosh.
mind activate or activity.
It's under the crisis survival skills. Can you look up DBT crisis survival skills? And then read them back to me and I'll tell you which one it is.
So
Mm-hmm.
one is called the stop skill.
Yep, that's it. Not it. Mm-hmm.
The other one's pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
Distracting with wise mind accepts.
That's it.
Okay, there we go.
Accepts is the acronym. And then, so accepts, A stands for activities. C stands for contribution.
Mm-hmm.
The other C stands for comparison.
Yep.
The E stands for, what does the E stand for?
Emotions.
Oh, okay. Duh, that makes more sense. T stands for,
Pushing away.
oh, that's P, pushing away. And then T, you're going to have to read me the last two because I lost it.
T is for thoughts, and then S is for sensations.
Aha. Okay. On a different day and time, I'll break that down further for you guys. I used to know that like that. Thank you, Joab. But yes, for the first half of it, the idea of the skill, right? It falls under crisis survival. So, not to sound like a total nerd, but I'll break this down. When you have someone who is experiencing such intense emotions, right? And high urges to engage in behaviors that are ineffective, DBT says, hey, it's great to engage in these crisis survival skills that fall under distress tolerance. Distress tolerance is basically us learning how to get through it, learning how to tolerate the uncomfortability, to tolerate the distress, learning how to get through a difficult time without making the situation worse. So here's the thing: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I wrote that one time on the board, and I swear I thought people were going to throw their shoes at me, and not in a good way when someone sings well. Like, I meant like in a very hurtful way. Like, when I walked into that group room and I wrote that quote on the board, my clients were like, "Get out." They're like, "Get out and leave the field and never come back." They didn't say those words, but they're like, what in the F are you talking about? I think someone used that actual word. And I said, so and so. Let's take it down a second. Let's break this down. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. That was my quote to introduce distress tolerance. Distress tolerance. And some clients were like, oh, this makes sense. And someone's like, break that down to us. They're like, well, we're always going to have pain because things are always going to happen. We can have our good times, right? And then we can have some bad times where life just be lifing, throwing us all these curveballs. But how we deal with it is what matters. And the person looked at me, they're like, is that correct? I said, that's exactly it. So distress tolerance skills, when they're taught, it's helping someone to not add to their suffering. You're already suffering enough. You'll need to add more to it by engaging in a behavior that doesn't help you. It just makes the situation worse. We have more control than we think we do. We have more power than we think we do. So in DBT lingo, DBT developed these crisis survival skills such as stop, pros and cons, accept with wise mind. Wise mind accepts, yeah. Self-soothing, and improve the moment. Those are the crisis survival skills. And it was just all about learning how to engage in various activities to reduce the intensity of your emotions, to reduce it, to just bring it down a bit. Think of it as a high temperature. We want to bring it down. Because sometimes when we're feeling things, right, our body temperature literally gets intense. Actually, tip skill, I forgot, that's a crisis survival skill as well, right? Our body temperature literally goes up. So the tip skills, like, let's tip the temperature. Let's actually bring you from hot to cool, right? Because what happens is when you reduce the intensity of your emotions, you're actually activating the logical part of your brain. And that's when you can be able to engage in this space called wise mind, which is the wisdom within, but it's pretty much that state of mind that allows you to acknowledge several things. One, what am I feeling? Two, what do I know? How do I bring these two things together and engage in the behavior that is effective? Distress tolerance is an area, it's a module of DBT, and it's all about, again, teaching us these crisis survival skills, teaching us various skills to reduce the intensity of our emotions, so therefore we can just activate the logical parts of our brain and to give us a chance to think about what should we do next that's going to be helpful. What is the next helpful thing I can do for myself? So, and wise mind accepts, the second C is comparison. And going back to that, I always encourage folks to compare themselves to their past selves. What are you doing now that you weren't doing back then? Now, I usually get some folks that are, I would dare say, kind of my people, the negative Nancy's in the world, right? And they're like, but what happens if I'm sucking now compared to back then? Well, compare yourself. What's different? What's going on? Highlight the problem and then work through the problem. Work through the pain. It always goes back to that. Work through the pain. Okay, I know I'm yapping a lot, but I got to give this story here. I got to give this story.
Not yapping.
It's weird. It's like I'm doing a podcast or something and I'm
Right.
supposed to be talking.
God forbid you start yapping.
Well, Joab, do you have any thoughts though? I wanna make sure you speak, bro.
No, I am storing every single nugget because I'm like, first of all, this is like a psychology course on Wise Mind Model, and I'm like taking everything. First of all, just breaking down like the what is it called the skill. What was the skills again? The Wise Mind skills is what it was called.
Uh, the crisis survival skills or the
Yes,
wise mind accepts skills?
the wise mind crisis skills. Yeah, which is like
No,
yeah.
they're crisis survival skills. That's a different tier. Wise mind accepts is one of the crisis survival skills.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah,
I
because
got
I'm
a foundational training in this, so that's the only reason why I'm being picky or like nitpicking it.
makes sense. Makes sense. Because I'm like, I've never heard of this before, but I'm like, it makes sense, especially when you were talking about the temperature of emotions, like switching around the emotions. Like, I think I never thought like that was the actual name for it, but I could definitely say like that was something that was helpful for me in like managing like my emotions and managing like my feelings. But yeah, what you were saying, a part of the accepts model with like comparisons, yeah, that's important. I kind of to piggyback off what you were saying about the journals, yeah, like comparing myself to, what I did a while ago. Funny enough, and if you could elaborate more on this, that would be so
Hmm.
interesting. But I actually wrote, so last year I did journaling like through my book. It wasn't until the beginning of this year that I actually started doing journaling through my iPhone app with audio messages. A
Hmm.
few weeks ago I decided to go back to my written journal book just to see like what was like my year looking like in a written journal. And funny enough, the same things that I was going through in this year 2024 was similar to what I was going through back in 2023 when I wrote about it in my journal. And I'm like, it's so weird like how the emotions are like linked even like a year across, but like it's still kind of familiar. But had I not had like looked back and like saw like okay, like it's similar, but like how is it different now? I'm processing how I'm feeling different now in 2024 as opposed to how I was feeling in 2023. And I get that kind of clarity by looking back to see like what was going on in that time. So
Hmm.
yeah, comparison is another big one for me. So like it's interesting and needed, honestly.
Hmm. Yes, for sure. For sure. Wait, what do you want me to elaborate on? I want to make sure.
Oh, like the comparison of like I guess whether it's like a week ago or a year ago and like comparing yourself like emotions like from like
Yep.
your past self to your current self now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just want to make sure I got that correctly. Um, Sometimes my listening skills don't always be the greatest. I know. And it's weird because I'm a therapist. Being honest. Um, yes, to pretty much put like let's say if I could put an emoji on it, I would put an exclamation point on that you said. Because it doesn't matter too on when you kind of like the time frame that you're comparing yourself to, right? Now, let me expand. Let's say you're dealing with a situation and it's a recurring situation. You could deal with it in one way 1 week, and then like 3 weeks later, deal with it in another format, in another way. It's 3 weeks in between. But if you handle the situation you think better 3 weeks later than you did 3 weeks prior, compare yourself to that. See the comparison, and then see the different changes that you made. What I love hearing is that some folks, let's say it's a month later, they'd be like, "Wow, I'm handling this a lot better
now a month later than I was this situation than I was before a month prior. Because one, I've noticed that me sleeping more or me doing X, Y, and Z has allowed me to do to handle a situation or engage in a situation better, just because there are just different factors. Um, and it's kind of good to kind of take note on how you're doing, how you're progressing, and also take note if you're kind of regressing. Regression happens. It's not uh, obviously a thing that we want to do, right? But it's a thing that does happen, and the time frame doesn't matter. Now, if you go on saying, "Wow, I've changed," and it's 2 weeks later, it's like that's great. You're making changes, but let's slow your roll and say, "I've changed. I'm a completely different person." I, I, change is progressive, right? And change is always happening because change is a constant, right? Um, but how you're progressing, what you're doing differently, yeah, totally compare yourself on that. Take note on how you're doing. This is why also in DBT, there's this thing called a diary card that's given to clients. And it's their way of kind of observing their behaviors and also seeing the changes that they're making, if they're making changes, right? It gets you to kind of rate your emotions across the board, a specific set of emotions, right? Just like the general ones like sadness, joy, definitely anger, fear, shame, guilt. Um, and then it also asks clients to kind of check off if they engaged in ineffective behavior or not. It depends on what the diary card looks like. But the point is just that act, that uh, practice of sitting down, reflecting daily, and then kind of observing weeks later. I'm like, how have you been doing? For some folks, it's just so amazing for them to see, whoa, my shame was always like at a high 5, and now it's coming down to a 3. I guess this therapy stuff is working. I would guess so, right? Um, so it's just good for us to observe our behaviors, to keep track of our behaviors. That's pretty much what you're doing. So actually, when you're journaling and you're comparing yourself, like you're doing that whole comparison thing, like you're reading back of what was I writing a month ago to what I'm writing now. That's you tracking your behavior. That's you seeing what's up. It's reflective. You're reflecting. There's nothing wrong with that. Do it. Should always be checking a pulse on how you're doing. Now, don't do it constantly to the point that's going to give you anxiety, because then that becomes a problem, right? But it's good to kind of check in on on yourself, see how you're doing, compare yourself to now to back then. Did that Was that a good elaboration, Joab?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Comparisons can be um, deadly. Well, in deadly in a sense, it can be ineffective, right? When we compare ourselves to others. But if we're comparing ourselves to ourselves and just kind of reflecting and seeing how we're doing, it can be incredibly helpful. Now, a point that I also wanted to make about working through the pain, and I think this is going to be my final talk on it. This is where I'm going to start winding down a little bit because I think I'm running out of steam myself. Um, I will never forget. It was like 20, it was like the beginning of 2020. Like it was January. No, not even. It was in November 2019 going and I started physical therapy. And let me explain why. In March of 2019, I woke up with the worst like hip pain. I swear this must be a story of my life. I'd just be waking up with pain, right? Um, but I know I did something. I just wasn't paying attention to that twinge or that tweak or whatever, right? And I woke up with the worst pain and I started rocking sneakers
to work because I used to wear heels, and I was like, well, we're switching over to sneakers because I can't do this. I can't live this life. And I was like, I'm just gonna rock sneakers. I will do the Advil regimen. Everything will be okay, and I'll be good in like 2 weeks tops. That wasn't the case. That was not the case. Um, it only took me like 7 to 8 months to finally get it together and to finally see a physical therapist. I even played softball that summer. And it got to the point that I knew my pain like management. I had a regimen that I would pop some Advil before the game, right? Play, and then I would pop some Advil after the game with
Oh,
along with a nice hot bath, some Epsom salt, and go to sleep and go to work the next morning. I know. You said oof,
my
Joab.
goodness. My goodness. The amount of stress on your body, I could only imagine. My gosh. My gosh.
Yes, it was stress on my body. And I how old did I turn? I was in my late 20s when this happened. And I think that's what was taking me off and why I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. So let me kind of fast forward to physical therapy. Physical therapy. I finally started physical therapy, right? I was like, I need to do this joint. So I went through the motions of getting referred and everything, and I found the physical therapist, and I was like, okay, let's just do this. I was like, teach me your little stretches so I can do this. See if this really helps. And I could go on my merry little way. I'm so sorry to anyone who's a physical therapist. My girl Kayla's a physical therapist. I do not mean to downgrade your amazing profession. If anything, after this story, I have the utmost respect for physical therapists. So I was like, teach me these stretches that are gonna help me. Well, one day, my shout out to my physical therapist Meredith. I like if I hope this pain doesn't persist, but if it does, I'm gonna look her up. I'm gonna be like, I need to come back. I need you to help me. I don't think this pain will persist, but God forbid if it ever did. Anyways, one day I'm on the bike and my attitude was not the greatest. And I think Meredith was getting picking up on that, slash, she was getting annoyed with it. And I'm riding the bike because she has to get my hip to move. Because you know what we're doing in physical therapy? We're learning to work through the pain, just like what you said earlier, Joab. So it's amazing that you said that. You gave that example, and I'm like, oh, this story's going to come in handy dandy here. Right? Learning how to work through it. Meredith wasn't teaching me stretches to kind of go away against the pain. She was like, listen, fam, we're gonna stretch it. We're gonna massage it. And I'd be like, don't touch it. And she's like, I have to. And then I'd be like, okay, touch it deeper because that's actually helping. Right. Um, but she's having me be on the bike because she's building up, the muscle around it, right? Because it's weak. And because I've changed how I sit, I changed how I walk, I've changed a lot just to accommodate this pain as opposed to let my body do what it does through this pain. Now, granted, some of us want to push it like I was pushing, and thank goodness Joy went, oof, the stress that your body went through. Yes, because what on earth did I have? Why did I have to be running around bases in the summer with a hurt hip? No, some of us want to take this whole, I'm going to walk through this pain. You take it to a whole other level that you're hurting yourself even more. I'm going to need you to sit down and go to physical therapy and take a hot bath and put some Epsom salt or do an ice bath. Do something, right? There's no need for you to have to work through this. I wasn't going to get signed. Big Papi wasn't going to come to Lawrence, Massachusetts and suddenly have me be in the major leagues for baseball. That was not going to ever happen. There was no need for me to do that, but I did it. Because sometimes we not work through pain. Sometimes we abuse our pain. But I'll touch on that on a different time. So that night I was a little cranky. I had a little bit of a tooth, and Meredith stopped my bike, and she's like, listen, I'm going to tell you something. And I said, not this lady about to give me an attitude. Wait, I'm going to let her do her little speech, and then I'm going to come at her. And she's like, listen, I don't know why you have this pain. I'm like, that's the problem. I'm in my 20s. There's no need for me to be waking up with this pain. Like, gosh, I wish I could say I got into a fight. At least there was an example, but this just happened. And she's like, it just happens. Are you gonna stay focusing on the why this happened, or are you actually gonna like suck it up and deal with it? And I looked at her. She's like, it just happens. We don't know why this stuff happens. But the good thing is this is something that you can fix, but you're gonna have to change your mindset. And also, your anxiety is very high. So we're gonna have to put in some breathing exercises. I said not her putting breathing exercises into my workout routine, but she did. Meredith always made sure that I ended my physical therapy sessions with 5 minutes of breathing in a particular position, in a particular hold, so my body could relax. Because you know what she was also touching on, because this is a good physical therapist, right? She's touching on the body for sure. She's giving me stretches that are going to work out my body, but she also knows that this is a mental thing as well. Because your mind and body are connected. That's a topic in itself for another day. But your mind and body are connected. My body had to have been telling me something. Well, it was telling me something. It was, one, you're abusing the hell out of us. I'm going to need you to slow it down. And two, there's this thing called anxiety. You should really look it up. I felt like that's what my body told me. It gave me a little bit of an attitude, hence the pain. There's a thing called anxiety. You should look it up. And surely not. I did my stretches, I worked through my pain, and I did my breathing exercises. My hip has been good ever since. And when I start to feel a hip pain, kind of going back to my mom, when my mom says my lower back is bothering me, my family immediately is like, sit down, rest up. She's like, get off your feet. She's like, I will. But I have to do my stretches. I even taught my mom. This was actually a really cool moment. Years later, after going through my hip pain, I learned some amazing stretches to even help with my lower back and my hip. I showed them to my mom because my mom, her back acted up real nasty one time. And it was just like hurting her so bad. I said, Mom, come, let's do some stretches together. We both had our yoga mats and I showed her these stretches. Now my mom, she's a pro. She's a master champion. Heck, she could show me a couple stretches here and there. My mom could have easily in that moment say, no, I don't want to deal with this right now, Darian. Instead, I saw her get up from her pain, hobble down the stairs. I had to help her down the stairs. I had to hear her groan a little bit so she could just do a child pose very well. And then we began. But because I went through my own issues, I was able to like show her a couple things. And guess what? She was able to tell me a couple things too. Because I also have a sensitive lower back. I didn't fall off a chair. I didn't slip off of a chair like my mom did. I'm just sometimes don't be taking very good care of my body. So my body sometimes is like, girl, we're just gonna break down on you if you don't get it together. But in that moment, that cool moment that my mom and I had, we both worked through our pain. Work through your pain. Don't work against it. Don't accommodate the pain. Don't adjust your life because there's this thing called pain and you can't touch it and you can't go anywhere near it. Listen, work through it and work through it with the support around you. Final thing. There's this pastor that I know and he lost his son. And it's just heartbreaking. Lost his son. But he wrote an amazing post where he said, I had to learn to ask for help because the death of my son was getting not the better of me. It was just making me be undone. The pain that I was feeling made me not want to wake up in the mornings, made me not want to be out there anymore. And he learned to ask for help. My dude worked through his pain and he's still working through his pain, but he has his support system. He has his people. He said in his post too that he felt ashamed, that he told his other children, I feel ashamed. I feel like not a good father. I feel less of a man. And his sons were like, don't, because if our brother reached out for help, things would have been different. That's a reality. Sometimes people are carrying pains so bad that they can't hear some truths. They don't want the truths that they're hearing is just not landing, and they're crying. They're walking out with such deep pain. Man, let's be a support to someone. But if you're walking around with such a heavy pain, reach out for help. Support is there. For those of you who are not walking around with such intense, heavy pain that I'm referring to, and I think you know where I'm going with, but if you have to work through it, excuse me, sorry. If you have to work through it and you can no longer go against it and you can no longer go around it, but you got to walk through that fire, listen, hope is right there with you and it's on the other side waiting for you. My hope is I call him Jesus. That's hope for me. But I'll tell you this too. There are people who are willing, wanting to definitely love you enough to walk through the fire with you.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to work through your pain. Did I sound like my mom there, Joab?
I think it was a good mix. It was a good mix. It was a good mix. It was a good mix.
Sorry, I should have held the moment a little longer.
Nah, I think it was good. It was good.
Work through the pain. All right? You're not alone. Okay? You take care of yourself. Remember, be in tune. Peace.